If you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then you are definitely not alone. The franchise has grown into a behemoth since its inception back in 2008 with the release of the first Iron Man movie. Its popularity has grown to incredible heights, and I for one count myself a part of that fan base. Now, about 3 years ago on the Film Theorist's YouTube channel, MatPat uploaded a video where he discussed whether it would be a wise decision for Disney to purchase the rights to Spider-Man for $10 billion. He argued that while it may seem like a good deal for Disney to regain full control of one of the most popular superheroes in the world and all of the IP that sits within the Spider-Verse, there were still several factors to consider, including the high cost of acquisition, potential antitrust issues, and they ran the risk of potentially oversaturating the market with Spider-Man specific content. In his follow-up video, Disney vs. Sony Part 2, MatPat discusses the possibility of Disney using legal loopholes to regain control of Spider-Man without having to buy the character from Sony. In that video, he explored the history of Spider-Man's ownership and dived into the complex licensing agreement between Sony and what is now Marvel and Disney. And what he found was that if Sony were to be acquired by another company, the rights to the Spider-Man IP would default back to Marvel, which is now Disney. The video went on to explain that while Disney or Marvel could potentially use legal loopholes to regain the Spider-Man IP, that it would be a risky move, which could definitely tarnish their name and lead to backlash from the fans and potentially leave a stain or a bad taste in the entertainment industry's mouth, which could ultimately not ruin their company. I think they're too big to be ruined by something like that, but it could definitely squander their reputation. The video wrapped up by concluding that while it may be tempting for Disney to try and gain back the Spider-Man IP, it may not be worth it to make such a large investment, and instead, the company should potentially focus more on the characters that they are currently building into their MCU, which is what sparked the idea for the video today. Is Sony deliberately trying to ruin Spider-Man's reputation to force Marvel to purchase the character before Sony's potential acquisition by what was initially rumored to be Apple? At first glance, the Spider-Man character seems to be more popular and profitable than ever before. The third installment of the latest Spider-Man trilogy, Spider-Man No Way Home, almost grossed a staggering $2 billion at the box office, where the first two movies in the trilogy also performed pretty well at the box office, bringing in a combined total of $4.15 billion across all three movies. However, it's worth noting that these films were made in partnership between both Disney and Sony. When we take a closer look at the other Spider-Man movies distributed solely by Sony Pictures, it becomes a lot easier to discuss the potential theory I have that I am presenting in this video. At the time of recording this video, Sony have released 4 movies related to the Spider-Verse, being Venom, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which is an animated movie, I'll talk more about it in a minute, Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, and finally Morbius.
It's Morbid time.
With their 5th being Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse coming very soon. Now, Sony have definitely proven their ability to captivate audiences with their storytelling, delivering beautiful narratives that leaves the viewers wanting more.
That's all it is, Miles. A leap of faith.
When we look at the success of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, it highlights Sony's expertise in animation and storytelling, placing them in a league of their own. However, the situation is quite different when we shift our focus to the live action movies. The first Venom movie failed to reach the $1 billion mark at the global box office, and its sequel performed even worse. The Morbius movie was a commercial failure, receiving negative reviews and disappointing box office results as the icing on the cake. While it's blatantly clear that both Venom and Morbius are nowhere near as popular as the Spider-Man character, it's still worth noting that these movies received pretty harsh and negative reviews. Critics have have criticized the incoherent storytelling and the unenjoyable viewing experience, leading to a lack of interest among audiences, resulting in lower box office results. Remember, we know that Sony have the capability to produce successful movies that capture the audience's attention and leave them wanting more. So what is causing Sony's recent live-action superhero movies to fall short? I believe that these movies are not only hurting Sony's reputation, but damaging the comic book movie industry as a whole. Their poor performance could be tarnishing the reputation of the Spider-Man character. Now, I personally believe it may be leaking over to what is going on in the MCU with comic book movie fatigue, even though the MCU is kind of riddled with chlamydia and has its own issues to deal with. So let's revisit what MatPat discussed in his video. If Sony were to be acquired, they would lose all rights to the Spider-Man IP and it would revert back to Marvel. So the theory is that Disney, who owns Marvel with an estimated worth of $180 billion at the time of recording this video, absolutely has the means to acquire the Spider-Man intellectual property from Sony. In 2017, Disney acquired 21st Century Fox for a staggering or eye-watering price tag of $71.3 billion, which brought a wide range of comic book characters into their collection, and these characters will soon be showcased on the big screen. In my opinion, it's pretty easy to see how the upfront investment to gain control over the content that is produced surrounding these characters will well and truly be worth it in the years to come, as it will not only allow them to make incomprehensible profits from the characters that they now own, but also gives them control over the distribution of that content to ensure that it receives the Disney treatment. And this can be backed up by evidence where if we look at recent performances of some of the Fox comic book movies, you'll see that they were also less than impressive. For instance, Fantastic Four, released in 2015, barely made a profit and performed very poorly. New Mutants actually resulted in a loss, while X-Men Dark Phoenix also almost ended up in a loss as well. I think MatPat was onto something back when he made his video, where at that point in time, it seemed like it was just going to be a waiting game for Disney. And this is kind of the crux of today's video. I really do wonder if the ownership of the Spider-Man IP is causing delays in a bigger transaction that is trying to take place behind closed doors at Sony. I also wonder if investors involved in this project are starting to become hesitant or frustrated with Sony trying to resolve its complexities and issues surrounding this highly profitable franchise. Of course, it's all speculation, but I really did think it would be an interesting deep dive, and I'm really glad MatPat brought that video out when he did, because it's been on my mind for a really long time, and now that some time has passed, I wanted to have my say because I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the near future. As a fan of the character, I have thoroughly enjoyed Spider-Man being brought to us on the big screen over the past 2 decades, except for Morbius. That movie really and very truly was garbage. To wrap up, I guess we'll have to wait and see, because deals like this generally take large periods of time to come to fruition, and the fans are usually the last ones to find out what is actually happening. It really would be kind of cool to see my theory come true. But as MatPat would say, but hey, that is just a theory. And